Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Look, we might get a start. I am expecting, wonderful, thanks, Heather. I am expecting a few more people, or quite a few more people, given how many have registered. But in the event, this will be recorded, which is excellent. So you'll be able to learn from Tony's wisdom, you know, at a later time if right now doesn't suit you. For those who don't know me, my name is Chantel Petrie. I'm the project officer with the Family Law Pathways Network for Toowoomba and Southwest Queensland. If you don't know about the Pathways Network for Toowoomba and Southwest Queensland, it's a really great network that's funded by the Attorney General's Office. We have a LinkedIn page. We also have a internet page. If you go to QLD FLPN, put that into your search browser and it'll come up with our website. And what we do is we arrange training events and opportunities to collaborate, because we all know that working in the family law area and working with separated parents can sometimes feel really isolating as a professional. So it's really important that we're able to have these opportunities where we can network and gather and really learn from people. Like, we're lucky enough today to have Tony with us. Before I hand over to Tony, I will just give a little bit of an intro, because Tony does have quite an amazing background, and I think you'll all agree just how lucky we are that Tony has generously donated his time to be here with us today. So Tony has over 37 years experience in drug and alcohol testing and services, including legislation and policy development. He's been involved with the establishment and operation of drug testing regimes in Queensland Corrections and also the Australian Defence Force. He's been involved with staff training and development, as well as management and union negotiation. He has extensive court experience in ensuring alcohol and drug testing protocols stand up in court. He served as the chairman of the Parole Advisory Committee in Queensland and was a founding member of the award-winning Queensland Drug Courts. He designed the first mobile drug test vehicle, and for this he was recognised with an Australia Day Achievement Award in 2002. He's a certified trainer and lecturer with international experience, and a member of the International Association of Forensic Toxicologists, the Society of Hair Testing, Family Law Practitioners Association, and the Forensic and Clinical Toxicology Association. And if that's not enough, although retired, he was for a significant period of time, over 30 years, a senior officer in the Royal Australian Air Force Reserves. So I hope you'll all welcome Tony. We're very grateful to have you here. Now, can I just say to those who are attending, this is going to be a slightly different webinar in that it's not the one where we want people to necessarily have their microphones on and cameras off at all time and just listen, because it's hoped that this is going to be a really interactive session where Tony is gratefully happy to answer any questions that you have as they arise. And so obviously, if you do want to ask a question, we'd ask that you put your camera on and unmute yourself so that we can have that interaction. In saying that, I know that not everyone feels as confident doing that. There is a chat box that we'll be monitoring, as well as a Q&A box that we'll be monitoring. So please feel free to ask questions as we go, and we'll make this training really what you want it to be, to best serve your purposes. If you're not, though, talking, can I just ask that you keep your microphone off for that time, just so that we all know how fickle teams can be, to make sure that it does keep on Tony, so that people can see Tony and the slides for the most part. But over to you, Tony.
Thanks, Chantel. And I promise I'll only use the up-down button, because otherwise I'm likely to stuff this up as well. All right. Thank you for the wrap. Nice to be with you guys. And please do ask questions as they come. What I've got here basically is a bit over a 1 hour presentation, which means that there's plenty of time for questions. I mean, I can drag this out and make it go 2 weeks, but I promise we'll be finished within the 2 hour period so that you can get back to other things. But welcome, and yeah, thank you for the kind words, Chantel. Just a quick question without notice, guys. And I did ask this at a magistrates conference a while back. Who's going to admit they've ever used drugs? I have to, because it's in my CV. All right. But for those of you who are not putting your hands up, I will say the same as I did to the magistrates. You're telling a lot of porky pies, because that is a drug. I'm sure most of you have tried some of that. So's that. And the other one. Also, so what we've got is people who really don't think they take drugs, who basically we take them on a daily basis. And we've even got so familiar with some of them, we don't talk about them as being a drug. I mean, we talk about alcohol and drugs. Alcohol, one of our pets. We talk about caffeine. We don't think of it as a drug really, because we have it so regularly. Now, this sort of brings me to the point that's going to be of interest to lawyers. And that is that I really don't care, particularly in family law, whether a drug is illicit or whether it's not. What I'm more concerned about, and what the court's going to be more concerned about, is the impact on the carer and when they're actually using the drug, and whether it impacts on their capacity to be able to act in an emergency situation. So let's get a few myths out of the way, and let's have a look at what's legal and what's not. You've got a list there of about 10. What I would like you to do is, in your head, develop a number, somewhere between 0 and 10, of how many of those particular drugs in that list you think are illegal, as in not legal. And then we'll go and do a bit of myth busting. All right, so just get a number in your head. Anybody wants to ask a question or gets clarification on any of those, feel free. But otherwise, grab a number between 0 and 10, and then I will start to run down through the numbers and give you a little bit of an idea. All right, I'm going to work on the basis that everybody's probably got a number in their head at this stage. If your number was 0 or 10, you'd be right. Anything else, I'll show you where you're going to be wrong with it. All right. Alcohol. Those of you who said alcohol was legal, you must be over 18 living in Australia. If you're in the States, you've got to be 21. If you're in downtown Abu Dhabi, don't try and pull the six-pack out in the middle of the mall, because you will experience a very interesting side of the law over there, where you don't only get your booze taken and locked up, but you'll get 6 strokes of the rattan across your bare bum. They are pretty vicious with it. I've seen it administered, and it's not nice. Even in Queensland, when you're over 18, and let's say we go to the footy, and you go and you buy yourself something alcoholic, you go then to walk back to your place where you're sitting, and they say, no, you got to go back inside the barrier, because it's actually illegal to have it outside the barrier. So alcohol can be legal, can be illegal, depending on where you are and whatever. It's also a time constraint, isn't it? Because if you were in the United States 100 odd years ago during the Prohibition period, you would have been told that you were a criminal if you were either manufacturing or drinking alcohol during that Prohibition period. And this is what happens when we prohibit a particular drug. All of a sudden, we turn a whole part of society into an underclass of criminals. Happened with cannabis. Cannabis these days is pretty interesting, isn't it? Because we know that people can get it on script. In Australia, we know that if you go to Canberra, you can have a small amount for personal use, and all that will happen is that you will be told that if the police pick you up, that make sure it remains a small amount and that you don't smoke it in public, because it's decriminalised down there. You probably suspected that some of the decisions that come out of that place from time to time. If you went to Adelaide, or to South Australia, it gets even more interesting with cannabis, because you can grow 2 plants there, but you're not allowed to prune them and smoke them. Okay, so you wander around North Adelaide of a morning, they put a height restriction on it. They forgot to put a width restriction, so 2 plants makes a hedge in North Adelaide. And you go around of a morning and you see people coming out watering these miserable looking plants and trimming them lovingly, and you can see that they're clearly gathering up what they're trimming. So pretty interesting. But the drug driving thing, it's like alcohol. You might legally have a script and be allowed to take cannabis, but if you get picked up by the police and you're detected with it in your system, you will be prosecuted. So same as alcohol. So it's alcohol and cannabis are probably the two that we have the most interesting times with when we're dealing with people in the courts, whether they can or whether they can't, whether they should, whether they shouldn't. Opiates, if you're thinking opiates were legal, you'd be thinking, okay, probably codeine, morphine, we can get them on script, they're fine. But not heroin. How many of you would have thought heroin was illegal? Yeah? There's 5 countries in the world, including the UK, where heroin is not illegal, so long as you've got a script. They don't call it heroin. Heroin is its nickname that was given to it by the Bayer Company in about 1886 or somewhere thereabouts. The proper name for it is diacetylmorphine or diamorphine. And you'll find that if you're watching British TV shows, you'll see the doctor there, oh, poor old fella, we'll put him into palliative care. I better put him on the diamorphine. It's heroin, 6 times stronger than morphine and quite legally administered. Same with, whereas we'd put our people on methadone here to get them off heroin, they put them on heroin over there. They put them on diacetylmorphine and they just give them ever decreasing amounts until they actually get them off, rather than try and take them off cold turkey. Amphetamines, you'd be well aware that our people are allowed on script to take amphetamine, particularly for ADHD and other related things. Meth ice, we'd be thinking not legal, certainly not legal in Australia. But there are 2 countries that might surprise you where it's quite legal to have it in small amounts, and particularly in medications. The US is one of those countries. If you go to the US, you can buy the Vicks inhaler. I think I've actually got one in my pocket. The Vicks inhaler, which I'm sure some of you have seen, I mean, it's quite simple in its application. But if this was the American one, 0.009% methamphetamine, because methamphetamine helps you open up your lungs. That's one of the things that the drug was good for. When I was in Vegas, I bought one and I was astonished to see that it had some in it. So when I was flying out of San Francisco, I made very sure that went in the bin before I came back into Sydney, and the little beagle became my new best mate, with his old best mate chasing me with a big long rubber glove on. So it would have spoilt my holiday big time. So you'll find that there are a number of dietary products that come out of the US that will have meth in them. And there are in China, you'll find that there's a number of medications that have got methamphetamine in them. When we were in Hong Kong, a mate of mine had some lung problems, and he went along and he just bought some normal sort of cough mixture over the counter in Hong Kong, and there was methamphetamine in it. So it meant that he had to toss it before he came back into Australia. Conversely, when you go over there, do not take anything that's got codeine in it, because even if it's on script, even if you've got a doctor's letter, they will lock you up, because it's, as far as they're concerned, you're importing narcotics into their country, and it'll take a couple of days for the embassy to work it out for you. Cocaine, you'd be thinking surely cocaine's illegal. Yeah, mostly it is, but you will find that Toowoomba hospitals have got cocaine in their drug safe, and that's for people who've had nasal surgery. And because it's it shrinks the blood vessels and stops pain. It's a vasoconstrictor, shrinks all those blood vessels. They'll put that into saline solution, and they'll put a swab into it, and they'll put the swab or swabs into the nasal cavity, and that will stop the blood flow, and it will alleviate pain. We had to do an investigation at a hospital in southeast Queensland a few years back, where patients were complaining that they weren't getting anything much by way of relief from it. And when we tested the swabs, there was very little cocaine in them. So they set up a camera, security set a camera up. Took 2 nights to catch the pair of nostrils that was getting all the benefit from the cocaine. And that particular set of nostrils no longer works in Queensland Health or anywhere else. So most of these drugs originally had legal functions, and some of them still do. Caffeine, If you're drinking caffeine, it's okay. Caffeine tablets are being looked at the moment as to whether we're going to ban them or not. So no-dose tablets that many of you would have studied and got through your studies on may well be banned. They've certainly banned them in the United States, where a student had consumed a teaspoonful of caffeine powder, and he went into arrest during a wrestling match. And a couple of others during other athletic things have had heart attacks and whatever as a result of too much caffeine. So already we've got, in Australian sport, if you're an elite athlete, you're only allowed to have a certain amount of caffeine in your system. And if you're a racehorse, you're not allowed to have any, of course. Nicotine. If you want nicotine, you can buy it in cigarettes. I know that you can illegally buy it in vaping gear, but it's actually not legal in Queensland except on script to have nicotine. Reason being, you can kill people with it. I had a prisoner at Bogga Road Jail in 1988, I think it would have been, in D block, and I had 24 prisoners in D block, and I was doing the rounds with staff one day, and I found this bloke had a big can of water and cigarette butts under his bed, and I said, "What are you doing with that?" He said, "Oh, I'm the cleaner. I keep the place clean." Now, the cleaner in jail is a euphemism for top doggy in that block. He was the standover man, and he got to stay in the block when everybody else got sent out to work. He got to stay in the block with everybody's cell doors wide open, and he would do the cleaning, but he'd also check out to see what contraband they had, what he might be able to blackmail them over. This was pretty standard in the prison. Anyway, he was saying he was keeping the place clean. One of the dogs, one of the informants, dog is a nickname in prison for informant. One of the informants came to me afterwards and said, "Hey, boss, that's not what he's doing with it. He's saving it up until he's got enough nicotine in the water to give old mate the bunk above him a hot shot in the neck and put him out of his misery because he was snoring and keeping him awake at night." So we got homicide in, and they investigated, and this guy got 4.5 years extra for conspiracy to murder. So people have killed with nicotine, and that's one of the reasons why it's illegal anywhere except Western Australia, in fact, to have it. We approached Australia Post and said, "What's going on? Half the population's got nicotine in their vaping gear," and they said, "Well, it's just impossible to keep out when it's coming in such small quantities in each parcel. We're only concentrating on the big quantities that are coming in." So they're quite open about it. Synthetic drugs. We get a lot of really good synthetic drugs, particularly some of the synthetic opioids, and they're great. Things like fentanyl, if used properly, things like pethidine, if used properly, methadone, if used properly. These are all good drugs that are helpful, and they're a lot stronger than what we would have just got directly from the opium poppy. But the downside is that there's an awful lot of bad synthetic drugs out there. We've got the cathinone family. Methylmethcathinone, probably the best known of them that you would know as the zombie drug, or FLPA. We're seeing less of it now, but it's still out there. This is the one where kids would smash their faces into windows after taking it. They would think they were going to float down off the first floor. They would sort of jump and expect to just float down. Mercifully, we're only seeing about 15 to 20% of what we were seeing 5 years ago with it, so it seems to be disappearing. Synthetic cannabinoids, very dangerous. We've had about 6 deaths in Queensland alone from synthetic cannabinoids. Steroids, illegal except on script. And prescription over-the-counter medications, legal so long as your name's on it, not mum's, as Warnie discovered. I miss Warnie. He was a source of great amusement and a lot of good stories for me. Now, even if Warnie's name had been on the prescription for it was an amphetamine that mum was taking for weight loss, Duramine, even if his name had been on it, Duramine, they tell you take one a day. All right, a lot of people who want to lose weight, they'll take 2 or they'll take 3. They might as well have had a small amount of meth ice. That's how it affects them. But if you breach what's on your medication, if you're having more than you're supposed to, and you're involved in a motor vehicle accident, and the police do a test, and they'll actually look at the quantities of about 128 different drugs when they do the blood test, you'll be prosecuted, and you may well be charged with manslaughter if somebody dies. So these are all things that we need to be aware of. Now, That's the legal side of the house. On the other side of the house, I really don't care about the legality of it so much as the impact that it has on people. We can test for all these drugs. Alcohol, easy enough to test. We can do breath testing for alcohol. We can do blood testing. We can do hair testing. They're the main ways that we would be testing. We did a little experiment here at a Christmas party about 10 years ago, and my staff, the measure of them was shown well and truly when everybody volunteered and handed their car keys over and agreed to get taxis home. And at 0 drinks, we breath tested everybody and got them to write, "I can drive when I drink." And then after 2, 4, 7 and 10 drinks, we tested everybody. We also had them doing things like walking in a straight line, put the hose down, walking in a crooked line, hopping on 1 foot along the side of the pool. That was pretty hilarious. We lost 2 there. Counting backwards from 100. As you can see from this person's writing, after 10 drinks, they're telling us I can drive when I drink or when I'm drunk. And after 15 drinks is qualified for medical school. That's my handwriting. And just to give you an idea, that was over about 5 hours. Myself and another guy decided that we'd really test the boundaries. I passed everything else. I counted backwards from 100. I did the alphabet backwards. I did all the hopping and the walking. And people were saying, we don't think, we weren't picking up that you were well over the limit. 15 drinks tells its own story, so is the handwriting. And then so did the breath test at 0.147. So if you can't hold a pen, you shouldn't be trying to drive a car, a truck, or a piece of machinery. We didn't really need to do that, but it was a lot of fun. We could have had a look at one of the studies that was out there, the Borkenstein study, which was done in Grand Rapids, Michigan, back in the late 60s, early 70s, was what we based our dropping from 0.08 to 0.05 in the eastern states of Australia in 1982. And what Borkenstein discovered, he looked at about 3,000 accidents, some involving alcohol, some not. And what he found was that people at 0.08 were 7.5 times more likely to have an accident than somebody at 0. But people at 0.05 were only twice as likely to have an accident. That's why we moved back from 0.08 to 0.05 as the illegal limit. My 0.146, 147, at 0.15, 27 times more likely to have an accident. So it tells its own story, doesn't it? We can test for anything from the opium poppy and also for synthetics. So some of the drugs that we can test for, and this would include urine testing, oral fluids testing, and hair testing. You can do blood tests, but they don't give you a result lasting for very long. But we can test for heroin and buprenorphine, which is often used to help people get off drugs, codeine, fentanyl, hydrocodone, hydromorphone, meperidine, methadone, morphine, oxycodone. All these drugs we can pretty much test for. The way that alcohol and opioids affect people, they're part of the group of drugs that we call depressants, and they slow people down. They slow the heart rate. They slow the respiration rate. They drop the blood pressure. They drop the body temperature. All this is affected by these sort of drugs. Now, there's one in particular called fentanyl that we're very concerned about at the moment. Between 2020 and the end of 2022, so over a 3-year period, fentanyl killed 70,000 people in California, fentanyl overdoses. We're now starting to see more fentanyl in Australia than we've seen for a long time, and we're starting to see quite serious problems on the Gold Coast, Sydney, Melbourne, to a certain extent Brisbane. It's up to 100 times stronger than morphine. So we're talking about an extremely potent drug. Normally it would be patch that would be put on an elderly person usually. It's a slow release that will dull pain for them. What's happening is we're getting kids breaking into old people's homes, breaking into the room where it's all locked in, breaking into the rubbish bin where they've got all this stuff, all the old ones that they've used, Kids are getting them, they're boiling them up in kettles, and they're getting the juice and they're shooting up. They have no idea what sort of quantities that they're doing. And we are seeing deaths starting to occur on the coast. We're lucky we're not in South Africa. Over there, they've got carfentanil, which is 100 times stronger again. So something that's 5,000 to 10,000 times stronger than morphine. And the kids over there are shooting it up as well. There's what a fatal dose of fentanyl looks like on the left, fatal dose of carfentanil on the right. You can see why it doesn't take a lot to kill somebody and how they would have trouble gauging from using used pads as to what's safe and what's not. You're going to find that there's going to be a percentage of your clientele that are playing with fentanyl. Not good. Benzodiazepine group, this is another one of the depressant drugs that slows everybody down. So you've got Valium, or diazepam, which is your best known of it, was known as Mother's Little Helper at one stage. You've got Mogadon, you've got Seropax, you've got Xanax. This is the dopey, sleepy group of drugs. Again, we can test for these in all sorts of ways. Now, 5 milligrams of Valium, when somebody takes it, it's only a little tablet, you wouldn't think much, 18 hours before people should be driving or operating machinery. So if somebody's taking Valium on a daily basis, you really need to look long and hard at whether they should have the care of children on their own, particularly at night in case of a medical emergency or something. Cannabis, well, we're going to get into all sorts of arguments about things with cannabis. It's we can test for it, but it's the CBD oil, and a lot of doctors are canny enough to say, let's try you on CBD oil first. Cannabidiol, it's one of the 106 or something metabolites of cannabis. There's only 2 that have got those florid features that cause an impairing effect on the cognitive functioning. So cannabidiol is the good guy, and he can treat all sorts of ailments as listed on the left there. Our doctors, we've got 2 doctors who actually do prescribe this that work for us. They will only prescribe THC after somebody's been on the CBD for 3 months. And then only if it doesn't seem to be working properly. Because one of the problems that we've got, your clients or our clients, a lot of them are just trying to get the medicinal prescription so that they can legally continue to use cannabis. When it goes to court, we're in a position where we're able to provide reports if you need them. They're about $1,300, and I get somebody who's a far more expert toxicologist than myself. In fact, Dr. Michael Robertson, who's #1 in Australia on it, and he can have a look at it. He's got all the gear. He's a pharmacist as well, and he's also a doctor. And he can look at the script, and he can look at the amount of drug that's been found, and he can tell you whether it's likely that they've been using as prescribed, or they've been overdoing it, or they've been underdoing it, whatever, which is what you really need for the court. Also, it's going to come down to when do they actually take it. If they're taking it in the morning and not driving all day, and they've got the kids at night, that's probably going to be okay, so long as they can prove that that's what's happening. But if they're taking it at night and then putting the kids to bed, what if there's an emergency in the middle of the night? This is one of the things that you're facing.
Tony, I've just got a question that was put in the chat.
Sure. Yeah.
And it's, is there an amount of cannabis you'd be allowed in your system when you're tested in driving?
Yeah, there is. And what they'll say to you is that, well, actually the police, when they do the testing now, the police test, it's a particularly good one, it'll go back about 12 hours. Right, so long as you haven't had anything in the last 12 hours, they're not going to pick it up. If people are using it sensibly, and by that I mean taking it probably the evening before, they're not driving then for 12 hours. Once they get up and they drive, they're fine. But if there's any detected in the system, in every state of Australia, except for Tasmania, they'll be prosecuted. In Tasmania, they'll be prosecuted also, but there's a get out of jail free card that's offered, and that is if they can prove that they weren't impaired. Now, I don't know how they're going to do that, Chantel, because all the experts on impairment live in Western Australia because they're with the mines, earning about $350,000 a year each. There's nobody in Tasmania that's an expert in this, so there's going to be no way around it for them. If you're detected with it in your system, like it is with alcohol, although alcohol, if you're below 0.05, you'll be okay. With cannabis, there is a cutoff, and it's 25 milligrams per 25 milligrams per nanograms per milliliter, I should say. So long as you're below that cutoff, they won't pinch you. But that's built into the test kit, so you'll never know whether you were there or whether you weren't. So long as you're below it, though, below that cutoff, you will not be prosecuted. If you're above it, you will be. Now, that cutoff, it's there to protect people who may have picked up secondhand smoke. You know, the old, I wasn't smoking, but I was in a room full of people that were passive smoking. Passive smoking won't get picked up. Definitely won't. They've done all the experiments to prove it. But anybody who's actually been participating, it'll be picked up for anything between 1 and 12 hours after. A particularly good study was done in University of Sydney in 2019, published 2023. And we got a few surprises out of it that we weren't expecting. What was not surprising was that about 85% of the population will be adversely affected cognitively for about 3 to 4 hours after smoking. But there's a small proportion of the population that are only impacted for 1 or 2 hours. And there's a small proportion of the population that are impacted negatively for up to 10 hours, which is why the police are now testing out to 12. And we can't tell who's who at the zoo. We just don't know. It's not something that's easy to monitor. Just to give you that idea there's your little chart that's telling us that we'll pick up a positive for somewhere between 1 and 12 hours with a saliva test. If it was a urine test, somebody who's only a moderate user, we might pick them up for up to 7 days, or a light user, I should say. Somebody who's a moderate user, up to a couple of weeks. Somebody who's a regular user, we're going to pick them up for about 28 days. I disagree with them, 30 plus. There's been plenty of in-camera studies done. Probably the best of the studies that was done with people smoking cannabis and then urine testing was the Canadian prison studies, where they allowed the guys to have a bongathon for about 3 months in this particular cell block under cameras, and then they took them off the weed, and they saw how long it took for them to get it out of their system, and that one took 18 days for the last bloke to get off it. So the 21-day rule was applied there. There was one other study where it took 24 days for somebody to get off. So they said, let's run with a calendar month, about 30 days. I can see more question on that one. No, okay. Hair tests will pick cannabis up for at least 90 days, and if hair's long enough, we can go back up to 12 months. Now, everybody stores and processes THC differently, and there's a number of reasons why that happens, and metabolism's a big part of it. How big a person is, how small a person is, all that sort of stuff. How they've used it, whether they've eaten it, whether they've smoked it, whether they've snorted it in through the nostrils with a thing called a shotgun. These all impact on how long it stays in your system. Because it's fat soluble, it does cause us some problems picking it up with oral fluids, because it sticks to the side of the mouth and whatever. And because it's fat soluble, it's not particularly easy to pick up with the oral fluids. It's very easy to pick up with urine and with hair testing. There's the different states and territories and what's allowed. Exactly what I said before. It's illegal for anything that's even vaguely recreational, except for the ACT, where it's in small quantities is allowed. Everywhere else, illegal to drive on it, illegal to have it for consumption for recreational purposes. But so long as you've got a doctor's prescription, everywhere in Australia is quite legal. Now, one of the problems with being able to work out, how we've got with drink driving, we can say anything up to 0.05 will let you off. We can't tell. There's no way of being able to test to see whether somebody is negatively impacted or whether they're not at a particular level. So if they find any level of it in the system, the police prosecute because they've got no other way of doing it.
Just a question about, because you spoke before about CBD versus THC.
Yep.
How does CBD show up in tests? Does it show up as THC or does it show up as a different?
No, it doesn't. Yeah, no, it comes up differently, Chantal. We've got to be testing for CBD to find it, and it's not in the standard panel of testing. So if it was a urine test or an oral fluids test, we're really only looking for THC. We're looking for delta 8 or delta 9 carboxy metabolite that comes from cannabis. Both of those will impact cognitive behaviour or cognitive levels in the brain to see whether they're impaired or not. They're the only two out of the 104 or 106, whatever there is, that are there. The CBD does not impair. So in most cases, you're not really all that very interested in CBD. So it won't be reported unless you ask for it to be tested in hair, and we can do that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
But it's I'd be saying it's probably not money well spent for the client because it's legal anyway, and it doesn't negatively impact them. So, but yeah, sometimes it's nice to know if they're taking it that they are in fact taking it. No safe limit based on results for driving with THC, unfortunately. Okay, so there's where our problem is. If we've got the kids at home at any stage and we've had some cannabis, what if we've got to drive? What if we have some sort of a medical emergency or a domestic emergency? That's what it's going to come down to, and the courts are getting more and more and more interested in that rather than whether it's legal or not. Why do we drug test? We're looking for the best information that we can possibly get as quickly as possible so that we can inform courts, police maybe, workplaces. Helps us to identify where the problem is, how big a problem it is, and that then might help us to work out what we're going to do about it. Often it's used actually as a measure of protecting children and other family members. Sometimes the drug testing, with the drug courts, we had guys say to us, we hate the drug testing. It's bloody awful. It's an imposition, but it is making us do the right thing. And some of them said that there's no way in the world they would have got through it if it hadn't been for the drug testing. Some of our people going through family law will say to us the kids are more important than the drug, and the only way they were ever going to give the drug away was if they knew that they were going to get caught and it was going to be reported back to the court that they had drugs in their system. So sometimes it helps motivate, bit like the carrot and the stick, isn't it? Certainly helps with rehabilitation because we've got to get people off it before we can help them start to rehabilitate themselves. So one of the questions for you guys will be, when you're trying to work out a court order or whatever, is how are we going to test them? What media do we want to use for testing? If you're wanting to find somebody who has got alcohol in their system at the moment, a breath test or a blood test will do that for you. If you're wanting to see somebody who's had alcohol in their system in the last fortnight and what sort of quantities they've had there, a blood test called a CDT test, carbohydrate deficient transferrin test, will do that for us. If we're testing for drugs and we want to have a look at something that's now or very close to now, blood or oral fluids is the way to go. So it depends on what you're wanting to be able to show to the court, or it depends on what you're wanting to be able to show to some other agency that you may be working with. If we're looking at showing what the person's history of drug use has been like, Urine tests are good for, it'll cover things for a number of hours or days or even weeks. So cocaine, methamphetamine and the amphetamine family, and opioids, so things like heroin and morphine and codeine, they'll all get picked up in a urine test for 3, 4, maybe even 5 days if they've had enough of it. But after that, it'll be out of the system. But things like cannabis, they may get picked up for up to about 28 days. And benzodiazepine, your Valium family, if somebody's been a really heavy user of that, it might take 3 months for them to clear their system. We may still be picking up traces of it 3 months later. So that's a bit of overkill, but anyway. If we're looking for longer term, don't worry about nails. If I was to have my nails tested, so long as I hadn't been using or handling drugs, I'd be fine. Even if I hadn't been using drugs, but I'd actually been handling them as an operative, your nails are porous, so it will actually soak into the nails. So we were often getting reports back that somebody had been using when in fact they hadn't, they'd been handling it. We had a number of drug operatives from the feds at one stage, very unhappy about the fact that it was showing up in their nails. So we don't use nail testing anymore. But hair testing, as I said, 3 months, maybe even 12 months if we really want to get into it. There's a chart, you've got that there, that can be promulgated far and wide. It just gives you a little bit of an idea of how long we pick up the different drugs in the system for. The different methodologies, of course, have different aspects to them, different problems. When it comes to urine collection, we often get people arrive here and they know that they've had a urine test, but they've had to quickly go before they left home, and then we've got to wait for a while for it to come through when they get here. Sometimes we'll go out on site to do testing and they won't know we're coming, and the sad story is I've just been, so we'll have to wait an hour or so and give them a bit of water to drink before we can get it back up. There are a number of medical reasons why people may not be able to pee. Somebody who has had prostate cancer, they may only have one sphincter in the urethra that's working properly, and it may clamp and make it very difficult. Somebody who's on methadone, both could clamp, and we'll have great difficulty getting a sample from them. Someone who's got an STD or urinary tract infection, it's not they can't pee, they don't want to pee. It's painful, and sometimes the discharge is really quite distressing for them because of the look of it, the smell of it, all that sort of stuff. It's not a pleasant process collecting the urine, I have to tell you, having done it now for 30-something years. Some will pretend that they can't go, of course, because they're just trying to stall for time. So that's some of the drawbacks of collecting urine. Oral fluid specimens, your big problem is hydration. If people aren't well hydrated, a lot of your oral fluids tests won't work. So what we tend to do, we know that if somebody drinks something 5 minutes before a test and rinses their mouth out, we've got nothing to test. They'll get rid of the evidence. So what we do is we let them have a drink of water 10 minutes before the test. So we wait double the amount of time for it to build up again so that we've got a drug level there. And then we'll test them because we'll actually get a result. Age has bearing on it. The older you are, the younger you are. You've probably got less problems with salivation. Just think of old people and babies. Hopefully I won't do it before the end of the show. But those of us who are in the middle range there, we don't salivate all that much. Most of it will happen during the day, not a lot at night. Gender has an impact on it. Females actually salivate more than men do, but it's just about all done during the day. Whether you knew it or not, ladies, you've actually got bigger saliva glands than the guys have. We don't know why. We suspect that it probably goes back because all female mammals seem to have bigger saliva glands, whether it was for chewing the food, primates I should say, for chewing the food for babies or whatever that goes back thousands of years, we don't know. But you'll also find females don't salivate much at night. And if you've got a brother who's a twin or around about the same age, compare notes on fillings that you've had at the dentist, because what you'll find is that usually women's teeth are a bit drier than what men's are, and they tend to have more fillings. Interesting thing to compare sometime. Foods, a lot of spicy foods and things that will make it difficult to obtain a sample. Drugs that people take, anything with an anti in front of it, antipsychotics, anti-inflammatories, antidepressants, lots of different drugs that will actually dry your system out, which is happening to me at the moment. I'll have a drink in a minute. And anxiety, of course, will dry you out. One of the drugs that dries you out, of course, is cannabis. So people who've just smoked cannabis, had a cup of coffee, had alcohol, all these things are going to dry them out.
Tony, just a question about urine testing.
Sure. Yep.
So I was just thinking about, in the movies, and they talk about, drinking a lot of water to dilute any urine testing, or, taking in, someone else's urine. How do you, is the diluting actually an issue? And two, how do you protect against any of those worries?
Yeah, I've actually, we'll cover that a little bit later in it.
Oh, very good.
But I've got war stories up my sleeve. So the thing with it is that we are required by the Australian standard to allow people privacy when they urinate. So they're allowed to shut the door, and that's fine by me, because it solves a lot more problems than it causes. But what we've done is we make sure that the windows are locked in the toilet so that people can't be handing them stuff from outside. Before they went in, we get them to empty all their pockets, take overcoats off, do a self-pat down. We've got blue loo in the toilet so that the old dunny dipper comes along and wants to dip into the toilet bowl and pretend that that's their urine, even though it looks like water. The fact that it's blue and it's all running down their arms is a bit of a giveaway that maybe it wasn't. I've only ever met one person who suffered from porphyria, and porphyria is a disease where your urine may turn a purpley mauvey colour when exposed to sunlight. But I've only ever come across one of those in 40 odd years. So the chances of somebody using the blue lewd water that militates against them probably being able to do that. Some of them, though, will sneak stuff in with them, or will have other ways of doing it. I had a prisoner at West Brisbane, or the old Wacol jail, and we had been tipped off that he'd had 2 lots of drugs delivered the night before, and he was going to be selling them in the place. So we knew he always checked his own supply out to make sure it was good gear. So we knew he was good for a couple of drugs. And we strip searched him the next day. So he had no clothes on whatsoever. And we watched him pee into a cup. And it turned out later that it wasn't his urine, even though I saw it where it came from, looked like it came from the right place. We had another guy who was a parolee, stood side on, and I watched him from the door. And it turned out later it not only wasn't his urine, it wasn't his penis either. So there's all sorts of little tricks that can get played. Women will sometimes put a condom of somebody else's urine, vaginally secreted, or bigger breasted women will lift the breast, they'll put the condom and they'll just let it go back down, and it actually keeps it quite warm, and then when they go in they'll try and use that. But we've got ways and means of being able to beat it, which you'll see when we get there. All right. The hair drug testing, we call it hair follicle. It's not the follicle that's getting tested. The drug actually goes into the live hair follicle, and once the hair dies off and starts to come out the top, it's like a photograph. It's embedded in the hair, and as long as that hair is on the head, and we can test that, and we'll pick up whatever drug was there at the time. Very hard for people to cheat with a hair test. Much and all as I love hair testing, it is not good for testing gamma hydroxybutyrate, GHB, which is one of the date rape drugs. We can test for ketamine, we can test for rohypnol, known as roofies. Roofies, you don't see much of them anymore because we can pick them up for days afterwards. Ketamine we can pick up for a few days after, but GHB is mercurial. It disappears, and GHB is also known as fishies, is one of its nicknames, because if you go to the Asian restaurant, you get the little fish that's got the soy sauce in it. They empty the fish out and they fill it up with liquid GHB. And the rule of thumb is one fishy stun, two fishy kill. So they'll only squirt the one fishy into the drink to knock somebody out. It's an anaesthetic, and it knocks them out well and truly. We're better off doing a urine test or a blood test there, but again, we've only got a few hours. So if you've got somebody coming into you and they're saying that they have been drugged and molested or raped, the sad part about that is it's usually about 24 hours before anybody comes near an agency. By that stage, we've got no chance of picking up on GHB, which is the favourite drug at the moment. Roes or ketamine, yeah, we can do that. And that'll get picked up in hair well and truly. The GHB will get a small amount get picked up in the hair, but the body actually produces a very small amount of GHB as well. So that's why we can't offer hair testing for GHB. Breath testing for alcohol, yeah. ETG testing, that's ethyl glucuronide. That's what we're doing with the hair test. Ethyl glucuronide is what the alcohol gets turned into. So you're probably aware that we talk about the drug that we find, the parent drug, and we find metabolite, what the liver has converted the parent drug into. Ethyl glucuronide is what the alcohol gets turned into. So when we're reporting back on what we found from an alcohol test, other than a breath test, it's going to be ethyl glucuronide. And that's deposited directly into the hair. It starts to break down. It's detected in the hair. Just to give you a little idea, you can see there on the side how the blood will feed the live hair follicle, and then it gets trace amounts of the chemical are trapped in the hair there, and as it starts to poke out, there it is. When we're doing testing of hair, that's about the amount of hair that we take. So there's a fair whack of hair that we have to take when we're doing drug testing. When we're looking at the results that come back from ethyl glucuronide or alcohol testing, we will allow up to 2 picograms per milligram and call that negative, even though we might have found a little bit of alcohol. The body sometimes produces a small amount of alcohol, or we may pick it up from other things like hair treatments and things that we spray on our bodies, colognes and things like that may have a little bit of alcohol that get absorbed into the skin. So anything below 1.9 picograms per milligram is treated as being negative. There is literature out there that would suggest that we should be a bit more generous maybe and go out to 5, and that's something that a report would bring out. People who are being detected with somewhere between 2 and 29.9 picograms per milligram, that's seen as low to moderate consumption, which is seen as being 2 to 3 standard drinks a day on average over a 3-month period. 30 plus is excessive consumption, which is 4 to 6 standard drinks a day on average. Now, the reason that we say 2 to 3 or 4 to 6 is to take into account people's size, their hydration levels, whether they're elderly, whether they're not, whether their hair is coarse, whether it's fine, whether it's dark hair, because the darker hair actually retains more drug and chemical in it than what the blonde hair does. So there's a whole heap of variables there that we've got to cover. So when we say that somebody's 30 plus and it's positive excessive consumption, we're saying 4 to 6 standard drinks a day on average. Now, if somebody scores 60, it doesn't mean that they're having 8 to 12. It just means they're having more than 4 to 6. If somebody comes up with a score of 200, we don't know. We just know it's more than 4 to 6 standard drinks a day because the study and the literature is not available on those sort of quantities. Most of the studies have been done around the 0 to 30 area because that's where most of the results come in at. Okay. If we are wanting to check to see whether somebody's got alcoholic liver disease, liver function tests are good. You can get that done through your local GP or their local GP. Ask for them to get the results to you. get something in writing from your client saying that you want a copy of the liver function test sent to yourself, signed by them. When you get them back, if you need a hand to work out what the heck they mean, because it's all gobbledygook unless you're used to dealing with it, we can help you. It's the ALT and the AST levels that we're particularly interested in, and the GGT, because they're going to tell a story about whether somebody's damaged their liver with alcohol or whether they haven't. And we need to look at all three to get a balanced picture of it. That's something that we're happy. That's a service that we offer. So any of your members are welcome to ring us on that 1300 drug test number and just run their results past us. That's why we say ring us. It's very hard to work out. The carbohydrate deficient transferrin test, it's a good test to see whether somebody's been abusing alcohol in the last fortnight. It really only covers the last fortnight. So while it's a good test, it'll indicate whether there's been chronic heavy drinking. It says over at least the last 2 weeks. It really is very close to the 14 days. That's a test that I would recommend that people do if they've done a hair test and they're not happy with the results of the hair test. Let's do a CDT test. The thing with that, though, is that you would need to nominate randomly when they're going to go for a CDT test, because if they pick the dates, they'll invariably pick a date where they've been very good little children for 2 weeks beforehand. I would, wouldn't you? All right, be the way to go. PEth testing. PEth is a blood test that will cover up to a month. We're still learning a bit about PEth testing. We can't offer it at this stage, but we're getting fairly close to where we'll be able to. I can't tell you a lot about PEth testing because it's new. It's not something that I covered in study, and it's something that I've got Dr. Robertson looking into for us. It's only been available overseas until recently, but I'm told that QML will be able to do it for us before too long. But it's again, it's a direct alcohol biomarker testing that we're looking at. So when we get our results, how the heck do we work out what they mean? Here's a hair test result. Okay, and obviously it's a bodgy one that we've done up, but if you're ever receiving results and either you don't understand what it all means, you can call us and we'll talk you through it. Or if you've received results and you're dubious of the source that's provided them and whether the results have been forged or not, which is happening quite a lot, I'm afraid. We're probably looking at about 3 to 4% of our results we're aware of are being fraudulently altered. And so if you're concerned about results, you can send us a copy of them and just ask the question, does this correspond with records held by us? And we'll come back with yes or no. And if it's a no, you can subpoena our records. I won't get bent out of shape over it. We make money out of subpoenaing. So by all means, send us something saying that you need the record. But when we're doing testing, we've got cutoff levels, as you can see there. Actually, if we go right to the top there, we've got the person's name, subject ID. We don't normally put that in, but we've got a CCF ID number that identifies the specific person and the specific test that was done for the person. The LAN number is the actual test number at the laboratory. They will put that in because sometimes we've got people have got 2 or 3 different result sheets that will come through. They'll all have the same CCF ID number, but they'll have 3 different LAN numbers. They'll tell us the source, whether it's head hair, beard hair, whether it's underarm hair, chest hair. Sometimes it just says body hair. Now, head hair and body hair grow at different rates, so it's important that you know what it was that was tested. Reason for test should always be unknown because with the American laboratory that we're using, they give priority to workplace testing rather than forensic testing. They're doing 1.3 million tests a month over at Psychmedics in the US. So our little dribble that comes through of about 800 tests a month hardly rocks their boat. So what happened was we contacted them and said, look, we don't want to have to write down that it's for court purposes, because we know it goes to the bottom of the pile, and we really need these quickly, especially given that there's been about 3 or 4 days travel involved already. So they very kindly said, just leave it blank, and we will give it top priority along with everything else. So we're actually getting them through in about 10 to 14 working days. We're getting results back, which is pretty good. Once we know the source of the hair, that then helps us to work out what sort of length of hair we should be having. We're looking for 3.9 centimetres if we can get it. That'll give us 3 to 4 months worth, depending on growth rates and whatever, worth of history. Obviously, you want to know when it was received at the lab, when it was released at the lab, when it was collected. That's all on there. Then with the results, we give you cut-off levels to let you know that anything below those cut-off levels will not be reported. So when you get a result that says negative, it doesn't necessarily mean nothing was found. What it means is that nothing below 5 nanograms per 10 milligrams for cocaine was going to be reported, in case somebody had picked it up from handling it, had absorbed it into their skin in some other way. So it's to provide protection against passive ingestion and passive inhalation, which happens. It does happen. Your alcohol result, that'll come back and it'll tell you whether it was negative or whether it was positive or whatever it was, and it will tell you actual levels. When you get a carbohydrate deficient transferrin test result comes back, whether it's QML or Sully-Nick or whatever, they'll tell you what level they found, and in this case they found 1.1% CDT. That's good, because anything below 1.7 is okay. Anything from 1.7 to 2.1 it could be an each way bet. Anything greater than 2.1, I'll be singing the song that, hey, somebody's really been hopping into it here. Yep. All right. So if you get any of those, feel free to either email them through to us or ring us. Happy to take phone calls, because it means we can really talk about the whole process. And I've got toxicologists here, including myself, to do that. There is a drug screen that's come back for a urine test from QML. Now, what will initially happen is you'll get a result that looks like this, that tells us that they've either found nothing, so it's negative, or they found something that is non-negative. Non-negative simply means they think they've found something, but they don't know for sure yet unless they put it through confirmatory testing. This is an inconclusive result that shouldn't be used for court purposes, because we really don't know whether they've got it right or whether they haven't. It then needs to go to a confirmatory test to tell us whether amphetamines were found, and what sort of amphetamines. Was it amphetamine? Was it methamphetamine? What was it? So the confirmatory report will look like that, and it will come back and it's telling us that, as you can see, it's way above the cutoff levels. There was a lot of amphetamine and there was an awful lot of methamphetamine. Now, that result tells me that somebody has been using meth ice and it has been breaking down into amphetamine. So it's not as though they're having amphetamine and methamphetamine. They're having methamphetamine and it's also breaking down into amphetamine. That's what they've found. So there's the one that you'll get initially, and you need to then say that you really need confirmatory advice on that. And the confirmatory advice is expensive. It's usually a couple of $100 a metabolite, so that would have been $400 to get the result on that. But without that, it's inadmissible in court, really, because it doesn't tell the court anything. Expert witness services. We've got Dr. Michael Robertson, we've got Professor Olaf Drummer, we've got Warren Hamilton, who used to run the John Tonk Forensic Laboratory. So we've got a number of expert witnesses available if you need them. It's just a matter of talking with us about what your needs are or what you're trying to achieve with a court report, and we'll tell you. We will tell you if we don't think it'll fly. I don't want to see people spending $1,300 only to be told that, no, it's not going to help you in court. Okay? We're making enough money without ripping people off. It's important that they know that they're going to get a result. Otherwise, you guys stop using us. So we've got to be good little people. There's our crisis line, if you ever need to ring us. and it is only open in office hours, 8 till 5, Monday to Friday. Sometimes it goes all weekend, but we've got 36 clinics around Australia, all ringing into here to get appointments for people and whatever. So, and we've got a clinic up in Toowoomba that does testing for us. So anytime you need us for something, there's your numbers. Now, let's have a look at integrity. Things that we need to look at when we're doing testing. When you're looking at getting somebody to do a test for you, you really need to look at whether the collector that's doing it is accredited and what sort of training they've had. We need to look at what sort of laboratory is like and whether they've got accreditation and experience. We need to look at whether the cutoff levels for drugs are realistic or whether they're really silly. Supervised or observed testing. This is one for you where we know that a lot of times you'll ask for a supervised test. Lawyers will ask for a supervised, even the courts, the judges will ask for a supervised test, a urine test. All our tests are supervised. What you're probably really looking for is an observed test where we've watched people pee into the cup. So if you want to know that somebody was watched while they did it, we need something from the court saying that observed testing was required rather than supervised. You'll definitely want to know whether chain of custody has been complied with. We'll be able to do that for you. You'll want to know what your costs are, and hopefully not as heavy as some of our competitors. And how do we go about making sure that you receive the right results? So when it comes to collector accreditation and training, our guys that we allow to work with us, they've got to do the training course. It's a full day of training. Just on the drugs and alcohol testing side of the house, it's another day on the hair, and there's probably another 2 or 3 days on legal aspects and on chain of custody and on self-protection and all sorts of other things. Trainers, qualifications, experience, all our guys have got certificates of attainment, so they're okay. We also train our people in ethical behaviour requirements. Having studied ethics myself, I was pretty big on the fact that our guys have to behave ethically and not only do it, but show that they have behaved ethically. Some of our competitors have had problems in that area, we mercifully haven't. We give our guys some very basic training and legal requirements. And what would be expected by the courts, particularly in relation to privacy legislation and management of information and data and chain of custody procedures. There's no Australian standard for hair testing, so you need to be aware that all laboratories rely on the Society of Hair Testing International guidelines. Some of the laboratories that we can use in Australia are NATA accredited, National Association of Testing Authorities accredited. And they may be allowed to test for hair, but because there's no standard, they can't be specifically accredited for hair testing. HASTA Laboratory in Victoria, very good laboratory that we use for some things, particularly steroids testing. But the main laboratory we would use would be Psychmedics in the US, and they've got an ANSI-ASQ accreditation, which is equivalent to NATA here. Everybody requires the ISO 17025, which is an accreditation for doing any sort of testing for a laboratory. When you're looking at laboratories doing testing, you want to be sure that you haven't got the Johnny-come-lately who really doesn't know what's going on. Most of our labs that we would use would have at least 15 years experience. Psychmedics goes out to 34 years. Cut-off levels, they become very important. Some of our cut-off levels that we're using are actually higher than what the Australian labs are using to make sure that we're not picking up on people who've just been handling stuff or not. FBI and Australian Police Forces, AFP, New South Wales and West Australian Police use the laboratories that we're using. So they've got a pretty good wrap. Hair wash processes. You need to know if you're using a laboratory that there is a good hair wash process. There's one lab in Australia that we won't look at. They do a 30-second hair wash. The guys who've got the best hair wash process is Psychmedics in the States. They've got a 3 3/4 hour process that involves 4 separate washes to make sure that they get all the rubbish out of the hair, so that anything that we find has in fact, or can be shown, has to have come from inside the hair, not the externals. There's an FBI white paper that's been written on that. Yeah, so we train our people in the legal aspects, as I said before, all those sorts of things. So any of our guys, you should be able to contact. They should be able to tell you pretty much anything that you need to know on this. Yep, talk about the ethical stuff. Okay, here we go, Chantel. This was what you were asking about before, about the cheats. The number one way of cheating is a fake ID. It's a company in South Australia for $800 will give you a very realistic looking Queensland driver's licence. Even the police have trouble working out whether it's real or whether it's not. So what we do to try and get around that is we photograph the ID and we photograph the person that's come in. So if you've ever got a question about did we have the right person, or was it their twin, or was it a sibling that looked very much like them, give us a yell. You'd have to subpoena it unless the other party's prepared to allow it to be released, but at least you know it's there to subpoena if you need to have a look at people's ID. When it comes to breath testing, it's very hard to beat a breath test unless you can play the didgeridoo, which means you can breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth, and you're not getting all that good air, alveolar air out that's going to have all the alcohol present in it. And some of our guys that we test, yeah, we can see what they're doing, and we know that they're actually able to do that transfer just in through the nose and out through the mouth. So what we'll do is we get around that one by getting them talking, and we'll get them to talk for about 2 or 3 minutes so that they're out of puff, and then we immediately spring this on them, and they can't fake it. The oral fluids test, if they drink water 5 minutes before the test, they'll beat it. So we always have them with us for about 10 minutes and not allow them to drink any water before we do the testing to get around that one. Very hard to cheat with a blood test. So we're not aware of anybody having cheated with a blood test. Now, don't show this one to the kids at home because I think you're on a porn site, but there are a number of ways that people will try and cheat. The most famous one is the Whizzinator, where the guys get the strap-on device, 5-inch, reasonably realistic looking rubber penis that comes in 6 different ethnic colours just to make sure nobody dips out. It's got fake urine, it's got fake creatinine in it, it's got a heat pad, it's got a pocket pump. And that was my man who was the parolee, who I was watching from side on. I couldn't tell it wasn't the real thing from the distance that I was at. It was only later when one of our informants decided to drop him right in it, and we had the police go around and they confiscated the said item. It was really interesting. They weren't sure what to call it when they took it to court by way of Exhibit A. So yeah, we had a lot of laughs about what we were going to call it, which none of them would be suitable for publication here today. Incognito belt. This is one that males and females can wear. It's got somebody else's clean urine in it. It's even got a temperature scale on the side there so that you know whether it's the right temperature when it's passed. And because they're behind closed doors, they'll often have that just under their under the tummy. And yes, it's there's ways and means that we've got of getting around it. I mean, we can check to see whether it's real urine or whether it's not. There's a few things we can do. To pass a hair drugs test by cheating, very difficult. We have had people who've tried to pass off hair extensions as their own, but you can pick up on that very quickly. There are some who've had hair transplants. Now, if the transplant's more than 6 months old, not a problem. But if it's under 6 months old, yeah, you don't know how far back it's going. So, but generally, hair testing, very hard to cheat. If you would be interested in being able to access a template, I don't know whether you're going to be able to download that. I can certainly provide one, Chantel, if you folk need it. That will save you 40 minutes, 50 minutes of drafting, and you can just play with it and just change it to whatever you need to change it to. needless to say, we've got our name plastered all over it so that we get the business, but it is helpful. Now, what we are writing into orders is that it's important that the right people get the results. So we do specify in there that the mother or the father, whoever it is to provide the collector with photographic identification, blah, 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 and who they're to provide the results to. Now, a lot of people play with that and they end up leaving somebody out that was important, particularly when it comes down to the children's lawyer. It's important that the parole children's lawyer doesn't get left out, so we've got that written into it. We had talked with some of the judges as to whether they wanted the presiding court in there, so they received results direct, and they decided that no, so long as it was going to solicitors direct, they'd be happy with it. But that's something that's an open one that we can talk about. Yeah, there's our crisis line again if people need us. We have plenty of time for questions.
That was great. Thank you, Tony.
You're most welcome.
And yeah, I've got Elizabeth saying, yes, please, to the template. And just for those who may have joined us late, and I've had some messages, so I do know there's a number of people who had trouble logging on, so they'll obviously get a recording of this after.
Yeah, no.
But I've purposely set it up so that people can put their camera on and take their microphone off to ask questions. But I know that not everyone's as confident doing that, so also happy for you to put them in the chat. Kathy asked, now, would a UTI affect what drugs are visible in a test?
UTI won't, but the medication they're taking might. So if they're on medication for UTI, things like urals and whizzies that people will take when they've got a urinary tract infection, that will certainly kill the ability of a urine test to be able to pick up on what drugs are in the system. It'll actually come back as clean when in actual fact it's probably masking something that was present. So depending on what they've taken for whatever, yes, it could.
And a question that I had, Tony, when you flicked up that result that showed positive testing for amphetamines and methamphetamine, obviously it's a significant amount over the, what the cutoff was. But how do you know then what that actually looks like in terms of use, particularly given all the variables that can, about how someone's body processes it, et cetera, like what do you actually derive from that testing result?
That one that I was looking at where there was a 300 cutoff and it was coming in at about 1100, we know that they've probably had that in the last couple of days because it's such a high result. Apart from that, right, how you get lawyers and you get lawyers, right? You got toxicologists and toxicologists. I've got blokes that I pull my forelock to that I will give that one to and say, tell us more about it so that we can get back. And the likes of Michael Robertson or Olaf Drummer or Warren Hamilton, they've got all the literature at their fingertips because they write these reports all the time. They can look at it and they can say, well, this would tend to indicate that somebody has been having heavy use over the last 3 days or over the last 2 days. But it's not black and white. We can't say for sure. We're saying it indicates or it's probable that. We hedge our bets a bit. Yeah.
One of the things that I really took from it and what I was quite fascinated about is just how this field is evolving, and the fact that you might have done one of these seminars a few years ago, but then, obviously with that, I'm fascinated to learn more about that PEth testing as it comes on board. And I know you're limited on what you can say about that, but,
it will be a slight game changer. Because it doubles the period that a blood test will allow us to look back. Because what we're looking for really is as much variability in testing methodologies that we can get. Because when somebody comes in, let's say they come in at a 35 result, which has them just above the 30, which puts them into that high range of 4 to 6 standard drinks a day plus. We get them sometimes whinging and carrying on and saying, I reckon that goes back as far as a bit further. And sometimes, because of hair growth rates, So hair growth is between 0.7 of a centimetre a month and about 1.5 centimetres a month, which is a heck of a variation. So in my hair or yours at any one time, we're going to have these different growth rates. And there's a thing called telogen phase in hair growth, where you could have zero growth of a particular hair or a cluster of hairs for up to 3 months. And then they get a big growth spurt on them. What you think is 3 months old could in fact be 5 or 6 months old. So
Yeah,
when
right.
you get a variation like that, people are justifiably a bit upset and say, hey, look, this isn't right. So that's where we would recommend that we do PEth testing, or we do CDT testing to supplement the information so that we get more information. Now, a lot of the time, our people, unfortunately, are telling porky pies. They have been hopping right into it. And that would be in about 80% of cases. But in 20% of cases, they're genuine. And it's been hair growth rates that have interfered with it. Sometimes also you get damaged hair. And what happens at the laboratory is when they break it down, when they keratinize it and turn it to sludge, they can put it through the testing process. If it takes about an hour to break down the 3.9 centimetres, they're saying that's great, the hair's good. But if it only takes half an hour to break down, they're going to say that's moderately damaged. There's a fair bit of damage to the hair, and it's just turning to sludge too quickly. And if it's only a 15-minute, this is very seriously damaged, and we wouldn't trust the outcome of today of the results. So sometimes you get results back, and they'll actually tell you don't rely too heavily on these results because of the damage to the hair. We may be understating what the levels are. So that's where it becomes important to be able to do these blood tests and other tests. Yeah.
And is the PEth testing, because Elizabeth's just asked, what will it be primarily used for? Will that be everything, or?
It'll PEth testing for alcohol is what they're using it for at the moment. But I can't see why they couldn't further down the track modify it to do other drugs.
And will it be more affordable than the hair testing?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it will. But bear in mind that it's only covering a month, whereas the hair test will do 3 months. So you might pay $200 for a PEth test, but you're paying $500 for a hair test for 3 months. So horses and courses.
Yeah, pros and cons.
It'll be what you're wanting to show. And that's always one. And I don't mind if people ring me regularly. Sometimes it takes me a day to get back, but I don't mind if you're ringing regularly to say, look, this is what we're trying to achieve. Which test do you reckon? We think it's going to be such and such. And I might say, well, yeah, okay, that sounds reasonable. Or probably a better test for what you're trying to achieve is such and such. We're happy to do that because you'll get more confident with the process the more you learn about it. The courts will get more confident with the information that you're giving, and we'll get more testing. So,
and
works
Tony, that drug, that 1300 number where you said if you get results and you want to talk them through, are they only for results relating to testing that you've done, or?
No. Yeah, no, part of the deal, when I was prosecuting, I didn't know an awful lot about this, and with the study I've done, I swore black and blue that for the legal community, anybody who wants to know what it means, they can ring us, whether it's our results or somebody else's. Yeah, no, that's fine.
That's amazing. And is there any costs associated with that?
No, it's a telephone call. Be your cost on the phone.
Yeah.
Or if you ring the 1300 number, it would be our cost, but that's all right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
Fine.
Excellent. I think we might have another question there from Elizabeth. So I'll just wait for her to.
To get rid of Judge Judy, shouldn't I?
She just says thank you, Tony. Yeah, as I said, that was a fascinating presentation, and I think I've definitely learnt, a lot more. And I think it can only help, practice, whether you're like me who also mediates, or I know that we've got, family lawyers on the line, and we've got health professionals, and we've got wide range of members. So I think there's definitely something in here for everyone, because as you indicated, that intersection does happen about, how do we know that the drugs are actually impacting someone's ability to be a caregiver.
Yeah,
And I think
sometimes we don't know. Sometimes it's just a healthy suspicion that it is that needs to be
yes,
raised.
yeah,
And the other party may need to be able to show that no, this isn't occurring because I have my mum comes over on those nights and mum's not on medicinal cannabis. And you get
yeah,
a sworn statement from mum that she's there on those nights. They're the sort of
yeah,
things. Yeah.
yeah, and it's great just to be able to know that and to know where, and even the limitations of the testing too. So.
Mhm.
But yeah, thank you so much for this presentation, Tony, because
You're
it's been
most welcome.
so
And
informative and very
no,
grateful that you generously just volunteered your time for this, given how
not
busy you must be.
Not at all. And I'm very happy to do it for legal community. Try us 12 months down the track. It'll be a very different presentation. It'll have more stuff in it. So by all
Yep,
means, give us a yell in 12 months and we do it again.
sounds wonderful.
Okay,
Well, thank
good.
you, and thanks
Thanks,
everyone for
Chantel.
attending
Thank you,
today. And
guys.
I'll end the event, and this recording will be available shortly on our YouTube channel. So if you don't already, do follow us on LinkedIn, because that's where you find out about our testing. So,
Terrific.
thank you. I said
Thanks.
testing, I meant
Thanks,
training.
Chantel. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Take care.